Hi everyone, welcome. The bins we're checking in on here today are European nightcrawler worm bins. They're 176 days of age today. And it's been 2 weeks now, 14 days since we checked in on them last. We've been following a interesting pattern here that I definitely like, because for me the whole concept of leaving a little top dressing of something out on the surface is just something I recently adopted and have been doing pretty frequently. But then the follow-up of leaving the material out here on the surface, all these leaves last time, is to come back this time after it's been sitting here soaking under the plastic and blend it all in. So I was just carefully looking around the system. I did spot a couple little things that looked to me like the wings glistening of some flying insects. And even though my Mosquito dunks has not been making much of an appearance lately, which is good news, just means I'm not noticing any flying insects, even if I see one, that's pretty much enough for me to want to treat the system just to nip any sort of infestation potential in the bud. And this way I feel like I haven't neglected my worm farming duties. Alright, so it looks like we pretty recently deployed these coffee filters because they're holding up quite nicely, and since I don't have any of this sort of stuff to include with today's feeding, we'll hold on to these so they can come back into play as our feeding zone indicators after we've laid in today's feeding. And after 14 days, I'm curious to see how these figs are doing. Besides figs, they got some other stuff in here as well too, but the figs are just one of those things that I don't normally feed in my worm bins. And from what I remember, each system got 2. I guess the reason I'm curious of the figs is not only because I don't really feed figs very frequently, but also because I just got my hands on a few more that went into the freezer last night. So they're not part of today's feeding for these guys. But my hope is to find that they were popular and that putting them into another worm bin feeding in the near future is going to result in happy worms. So basically I remember the 2 figs going in like so and like so. So I figured let's just reach right down into where I remember one of the figs being placed, and I suppose if it was a popular item, it would have been gone very soon. So, yeah, okay. I'm remembering now there was also the peels of some zucchini or squash or something like that. And that was just the outer peel of a large strip of that stuff. I even remember putting grit right onto that piece right there. And at that point, it still had some of the zucchini, the vegetable matter on it. At this point, it was stripped down to just the skin. And it looks like a little rubber band snuck in here, trying to pretend to be a worm. But yeah, let's get that out of here. That'll never break down, or at least no time soon. I guess if it's real rubber, then it is synthetic. I mean, it is natural, but I don't know, for some reason I would imagine a rubber band like that might have some synthetic materials in it too, but I don't know. I don't know too much about rubber bands, so we've created a nice opening down here. Let's proceed to seeing how the figs did over here too. I'm assuming at this point that the figs were a welcome treat and consumed entirely. And this looks to me like more of that peel of that large chunk of vegetable matter. Here I'm hitting something a little bit larger and more firm. This looks to me like the outer husk of a mango seed. Sometimes I see people taking things similar to this, stuff like avocado skins and stuff like that, and just crushing them and crunching them, but this stuff doesn't want to break up so easily. It has more of a tendency to bend and deform rather than break into smaller segments. But but I can keep trying. Yeah. All right, so let's get on with giving these little guys today's feeding. The bedding that I was going to use is my prepared bedding right here off on the side, which I just replenished my supply of by making some more. But I do have some leftover of the nice seasoned stuff, so we'll grab from that and leave the newly made stuff to age a little bit before it gets put into use. I've also got a couple soiled napkins that we'll begin with as well. So that's a nice little landing pad for today's feeding. So here's my, let's see, this is the newly prepared, so this is the nice seasoned stuff that's been around for a little while. Let's give each system a nice handful of this as well. And then in can come their foods. So the theme today is yellow. So there's this stuff over here, and in the bag still, because I'm frankly a little bit nervous about opening this bag because you can already see some fluid in there. This corn was cooked and was really leftovers, left in the fridge for way too long, and it kept recurring to me in my mind that, hey, I gotta one of these days do something about that. And what to do with it was not to eat it, it was to eventually give it to some worms. And in most cases, the stuff that I give my worms, as is the case with this stuff right here, is coming straight out of my freezer, oftentimes so frozen that it's difficult to even take the stuff apart. This stuff luckily fragmented easily enough. And as far as that corn goes, I don't know what to expect. My hope is that it's not going to be super stinky and gross. But I figure let's keep it in the Ziploc bag until the very last second. We could just drop it into the feeding zone and then cover it right up so that if it does have a foul odor, we don't have to deal with it. Might be foul to us, but I got a feeling that it's going to be something that the worms are really going to like. In the past, when I've fed corn cobs, it's usually been without the corn on it. It's usually just the cob, stripped clean of all the yummy vegetable matter. But in this case, oops, oh, they're getting it all, as well as the juices that have already started coming out of this stuff. So here I'm starting to get the sense that it just smells like corn. So okay, I was getting worried. I didn't know what to expect. I figured there was the potential for it to get a little bit gross. So let's just throw a little bit more bedding in here. Why not? Then we can backfill these feeding zones. This is also our chance now to blend in all that leafy matter that welcomed us when we first arrived out here on the surface. So as we reach to the outer edges to bring in material to cover up our feeding zone with, we're doing numerous things here. Not only are we taking a peek at the material to see how it looks, we're aerating it, we're blending in pretty newly introduced bedding. This 14-day-old leafy matter, it's been resting out on the surface, is now suddenly incorporated into the bed. It always feels good to just let this stuff sit in the bin and sort of soak for a while before getting introduced down into the bed. This way it feels more of like a contribution, not something that's going to end up being sort of dead weight or something that's going to slow things down. I don't know. Sometimes you just see brand newly added, I guess sterile is a good way to think of it too. Sterile bedding, basically. And a lot of times the worms really don't want to hang out in that sort of stuff. They want to let sort of Mother Nature move in first and see some microbial activity settling in and some organic matter breakdown process occurring before they would want to come in and start treating the area as home. So here, that mango seed husk, that piece of peel, a number of different types of objects that we've already bumped into in the past. We'll just get them down near the middle and, oops, got to be a little bit more careful. I can feel myself catapulting little bits of material overboard. It's part of the reason I like to have systems like this where the there's a little bit of sort of sidewall to protect from my haphazard approach to tilling up and blending materials. I could be a little bit more sloppy, knowing that it's not all going to go flying overboard, with a little bit more sidewall protecting my style. Very nice, very nice. Moisture feels very good in here. The okay, stuff sticking to my gloves. Well, I've got a trick for getting that stuff off. You've seen me use it in the past, so many of you may not be surprised. But this is where the leafy matter comes back into play. As we add more out onto the top surface, we get to use this relatively clean material to rinse off our soiled glove and give ourselves a little head start on the cleanup process, which will end over at the sink. But at this point, by doing it this way, we leave more of this lovely material down here in the worm bins. So that's it for the check-in with the European nightcrawlers. Things are looking quite nice here in these systems. I'm liking the moisture and the ability of these systems to hang on to their moisture so nicely is thanks to these bags resting out here on the surface. And it's so nice when you take that plastic cover off and you see all the moisture collecting underneath it. That's one of the real nice things about using the plastic covers. Although I do like coming in frequently to feed and aerate and till things up. It just feels to me like we're creating a good, healthy environment for the worms to live in. So that's it for the check-in, everyone. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, as always, please don't forget to leave me a quick thumbs up before I go. That's always really appreciated. And if you haven't done so already, please also consider subscribing to the channel. That's very much appreciated as well. All right, everyone. Thanks for watching. Have a great day. Bye now.